Hey, oh, hi, hello, I'm Hippie Rat, and it is October 2021, the Halloween season, baby! And immediately, everyone has latched onto a brand new horror property to hype about. You see, recently, a series has been developed that has taken the world by storm. In it, a group of people are provided a unique opportunity to participate in a series of games that conclude with a large monetary prize. What they don't know before starting the games, however, is that they actually represent a deadly twist to the normal rule set. And the victims, now imprisoned by the shadowy organization that gave them this offer, quickly find themselves competing not only for money, but for their own lives, all, as they discover, for the entertainment of a secret cabal of society's rich elites. And so I took the time out of my life to give this series a watch, and the joke is that it wasn't Squid Game, it was Escape Room. Before I get too deep into this video, I have a couple big announcements. This year, I've been pushing a couple subscriber goals, with a few incentives for reaching them. What I didn't expect was to spend this year so heavily dedicated to a handful of large projects that ended up keeping me from increasing my upload density enough to really favor myself in the YouTube algorithm. So I decided that the 10,000 and 20,000 goals may not have been completely feasible for this year, perhaps not fair to myself and to the rest of you. My plan in case we didn't reach these goals by the end of the year would be to create new goals with the same incentives, but I realized I could trap myself in a feedback loop that frankly wouldn't be worth the hassle. So the first big announcement is that I am removing the deadline. Now, if we reach 10,000 subscribers, at any point, I will do a video on Undertale. And if we reach 20,000 subscribers, at any point, I will do a video on Tattletale. It doesn't matter how far past the deadline for the goal we are, those videos are on the table at those numbers. That said, do not forget that while you now have more time to join forces and reach those numbers, it is up to you all to actually accomplish those goals and make me make those videos as soon as possible. Big announcement number 2! I learned how to count to 3! And to celebrate, I am adding one more subscriber goal, keeping in theme with the Undertale and Tattletale goals. Now, if we reach 30,000 subscribers, I will do a video on Telltale and their famous decision-driven, story-based video game formula. So, if you haven't already, take the time now to subscribe. You'll be helping us reach those goals faster. Also, these videos take a lot of time and effort to make, so if you happen to enjoy them, or at least enjoy my direction as a creator, make sure to check me out on Patreon and consider pledging a little something while you're there. Every little bit helps me out along the way, and it's very appreciated. With that out of the way,
I wanna play a game.
something that has been on my mind for a long time is the existence of a hyper-specific film genre that I call young adult party game horror movies. In 2003, the hit horror film Saw was released, spawning a franchise that followed a concept of people being kidnapped and tested in deadly trials that are referred to as games. In the 2010s, various movies began to pop up that usually took clear influence from Saw, all of which were named after party games played by young adults. Would you rather? Truth or Dare, Ouija, Blumhouse's Truth or Dare, you know, the one with the imposter is sus faces. And all this comes around to one of the last trends of the late 2010s, escape rooms, a special kind of young adult party game that doesn't involve a bunch of bored kids just asking each other questions and responding in turn. Instead, placing them in locked rooms with puzzles that must be solved in order for them to escape. You can make a horror movie about literally anything. Literally anything. So Zoe is a brilliant college student who is suggested to step out of her comfort zone and do something exciting, being gifted a puzzle box that, when solved, gives her the time and location for a high-end escape room experience. We also see a young stock clerk named Ben, as well as a day trader named Jason, receive similar puzzle boxes and solve them, meeting with Zoe and 3 other players at Minos, the hosts of the escape room. Those 3 other players are Mike, Danny, and Amanda, but because they didn't get a scene in the prologue, I'm going to call them Who Cares, Red Shirt, and this won't be on the test. They play the first room, a room that is slowly heating up like an oven, which bursts into flames just after they all escape at the last moment, revealing to them that this isn't just a game, and they could totally fucking die. The next room they're in is a log cabin, a simpler puzzle that serves as part 1 to a much larger puzzle, a room that uses a complex series of full-wall digital screens to create an entire environment that appears to not only be outside, but at a frozen lake several hundred miles away. They discover the key is frozen in a large block of ice, and Red Shirt dies when the ice breaks below him and freezes back over, drowning him. They all nearly freeze to death, but narrowly escape into the next room, an upside-down billiards bar where the ceiling? Floor? Where something surely collapses and reveals a long fall that is impossible for anyone to survive. They discover the key in the form of one of the billiards balls, but it almost falls down the big shaft that the room is situated in. This won't be on the test, sacrifices herself to catch the key and throw it to the other 4, and she falls, to her death. In the next room, they discover a hidden puzzle based on a series of files on each of the players in the game. As hinted by a series of flashbacks each character had been having throughout the film, each of them were the sole survivors of a disaster, and each of the rooms in the game are loosely themed around those disasters. The oven room at the beginning reflected This Won't Be on the Test's run-in with an explosion while on duty in the Iraq War. The frozen lake reflected a shipwreck in very cold weather that Jason survived. The upside-down room was based on the plane wreck that killed Zoe's family but spared her. And this hospital scene is a poison gas room, based on Red Shirt's survival of carbon monoxide poisoning that killed his family. Jason murders Who Cares while trying to solve the puzzle before he gets it right himself. Jason and Ben move on to the next room, but Zoe stays behind, determined to find another way out before succumbing to the poison and dying. The next room, inspired by Ben's drunk driving car accident, has Ben and Jason both administered a hallucinogenic poison, of which there is only one antidote, which they fight to the death over. Jason, having been the antagonistic one, quick to kill others in these games rather than collaborate, ends up being killed when Ben gets the upper hand, and Ben moves on to the final game, a large den where the walls start moving in to crush him to death, based on Who Cares' survival from a caved-in mineshaft. He manages to solve this final puzzle and survive, being the sole survivor of the sole survivors. He enters a large room where he meets the Games Master, not to be confused with the puzzle maker. The Games Master, referred to as Wu-Tan Yu, you sure? Explains to Ben that Minos organizes these games for the entertainment of wealthy clients who wish to watch people struggle for their lives, like people have historically done at gladiator matches or public executions. Meanwhile, some workers enter the poison gas room for cleanup, only for Zoe to get up and attack, having survived the poison with an oxygen mask that was in the poison gas room because she knocks them out and sneaks behind the scenes. Ben assumes that since he's won, he gets to go home, but Wu-Tan Yu says,
"At the end of the Kentucky Derby, do you think the horse gets a prize?"
He kills Ben, only for Zoe to show up, and where the fuck did she get a gun? Wu-Tan-Yu is put in play and they fight to the death, only for Ben to have not actually died, and boy do I hope they don't pull the dead person isn't actually dead shtick in the sequel. Finally, Wu-Tan-Yu is thoroughly killed, and Ben and Zoe just walk out the fucking building. While Ben recovers in the hospital, Zoe is escorted back to the Minos building by the FBI, investigating her claims. However, throughout the day they had been gone, Minos stripped the building down, making it appear to just be a long-abandoned skyscraper, with no evidence of the games that occurred there the previous day. Zoe spots some graffiti saying "No Way Out," which she realizes is an anagram for Wu-Tan-Yu, causing her to scream in anguish. The film ends with an epilogue where Zoe and Ben return to civilization, now close friends, and Zoe spends 6 months conducting a private investigation into Minos, finally deducing the location of their headquarters and convincing Ben to come along with her to confront them once and for all. They book a flight, with Zoe having overcome her fear of flying, and the film ends with a sequel teaser where Minos is testing an escape room designed around a crashing airplane. So that was a movie, surely. But of course, with sequel bait, there must come a sequel, right? And that's where Escape Room, Tournament of Champions comes in. Escape Room Tournament of Champions. Like the number... Now, I decided not to watch this as soon as it came out in theaters. I wasn't hugely impressed with the first installment, and I figured I could just wait. But when I did end up watching the movie, something strange happened. I should preface this with the fact that I'm kinda quirky. But I'm a kind of quirky that a lot of people hate. Now, I don't always do this, because if I said I always did, then people would rag on me even more, but sometimes, I read the plot synopsis of a film just before watching it. I know, but I find it doesn't ruin my experience of watching the movie. It just lets me know what to expect going in. A lot of nuance is lost in the objective translation of film to plot synopsis, so there's still plenty to take away from actually watching the film, and I believe you should never weigh a film's value solely on whatever twists and turns it has. I prostrate myself before you with this very personal secret to explain where I was when going into Escape Room 2. I had skimmed through the plot synopsis on Wikipedia already, something which garnered an entire, interesting from me. And I was starting to watch the film online when the opening scene immediately painted itself as a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit into what I had read. But more on that later. After a recap of the previous film, this movie opens with a flashback to 2003, just like this video did. What a coincidence. A rich woman named Sonia and her daughter Claire arrive home after a day out on the town. She goes to see her husband Henry, who is running out of time on a deadline to deliver a new set of puzzles to Minos. Because of this, he is extremely agitated and argues with her to leave and let him work in peace. She decides to go for a swim, after which she visits her home sauna, which abruptly locks shut, trapping her in there. She immediately understands what's happening. She's become a test subject for one of Henry's puzzles. The sauna's temperature increases significantly, steaming her alive as she makes an honest attempt to solve the puzzle, almost freeing herself before she succumbs to the heat and dies. We return to the present day, where it's revealed that Henry is the new games master responsible for the simulation of the crashing airplane that closed the first movie. His mansion has been transformed into a new base for Minos, and we are shown the puzzle maker for the games we will be seeing in this film. His daughter Claire, who he has locked in an escape room prison for several years, forcing her to make these puzzles against her will. Claire is concerned about putting Zoe through another series of escape rooms, but Henry insists, since otherwise she will expose the entire operation. At the airport, Zoe backs out of getting on the flight at the last second as her fear returns, effectively canceling the crashing plane escape room that the first movie seemed really proud of setting up. She and Ben rent a car to drive to New York cross-country. In New York, they manage to find the location that the coordinates point to, only for it to be an abandoned building, which they decide must be a front. While investigating, a man emerges and robs them, taking a prized heirloom of Zoe's that they desperately try to retrieve. They chase the man into the subway, and he tricks them into getting onto a train without him. While deciding their next course of actions, they discover that there is no conductor on this train, and suddenly their car separates and is redirected down an unused line, crashing into the end of the track. It's at that point that Ben and Zoe piece together that this was all a setup by Minos, a name that the other 4 people on the train recognize. It turns out these 4 are winners of previous games organized by Minos.
So that makes this what?
Suicide Squad.
The train gets electrocuted, and I don't think that's how electricity works, but I dropped out of engineering in college, so what would I know? This guy, credited as Theo, gets zapped and dies, but the other 5 survive and manage to catch their breath and speak to each other before moving on to the next room. Aside from Zoe and Ben, there are Rachel, Brianna, and Nathan. We learn much later in the movie that Rachel was the winner amongst a group of people with a condition that made it so that they couldn't feel physical pain. We learn in this scene, however, that Nathan was the winner amongst a group of clergymen, and that Brianna was the winner amongst a group of adventurous influencers. The next room is a bank lobby. The players need to cross the room to walk into the open bank vault, but they quickly find that the tiles are booby-trapped to activate a laser security system, and the full laser system will be activated in 10 minutes. They solve the puzzles and mark the correct trail in the tiles with lollipops, and after a few close calls and a photo finish, they all manage to escape to the next room, which turns out to be a beach scene. As they explore the beach looking for clues, they eventually activate a series of air jets that fluidize the sand, like that one Mark Rober video. Rachel sinks in the fluidized sand, but Nathan jumps in and pulls her out before sinking himself and dying. They continue to finish the puzzle and find the exit in a shack, but Zoe stumbles on a secondary shaft behind the moon at the top of the lighthouse. Brianna is determined to go through the intended exit, but Zoe convinces Rachel and Ben to join her. Unfortunately, the ladder on the lighthouse recedes before Ben can finish climbing, and he falls into the quicksand below him, sinking under. Zoe and Rachel continue on, taking a moment to grieve before breaching the surface through a manhole cover, seeming to have escaped. However, Brianna arrives from her own entrance, trying to retreat down the manhole that they emerged from, only for it to lock before she has a chance. It turns out that the city street they just arrived on is yet another illusory setting for an escape room, and every couple minutes the room pours a strong acid on the scene as rain. They manage to hide from the acid rain a couple of times before finally unlocking a taxicab. Zoe gets in, but it shuts behind her and locks the other 2 out, who embrace each other as the acid rain comes down and kills them both. Zoe is sent through a trapdoor in the taxi, but there is an error in the transition chute. It turns out that Claire has established a group of allies in the people working on this game, and they intercepted Zoe before she was sent to the final room, which Henry is surprised to see has been altered into the sauna trap from the beginning of the film without his knowledge. Zoe is brought to Claire, who reveals that she's been designing these puzzles against her will while locked in her own escape room, which can be solved using the screen showing images and symbols in front of her, but she has been told that no matter what, she wouldn't be able to solve it alone. If she inputs incorrect codes 3 times, the oxygen would be cut off from the room, killing her. Zoe is unwilling to help at first, not trusting her because she designed the rooms they just went through, including the one that killed her best friend, but Claire reveals that she built a hidden extraction tank in the sand and that Ben is actually safe and sound in another room despite being seen sinking earlier. I guess Nathan's still a dead boy though. Unfortunately, Henry's men find the room Ben is being kept in, capturing him and bringing him to the sauna room. Zoe agrees to help Claire, discovering a hidden pattern in the screens through a lenticular hologram that could only be viewed at a certain angle, hence why Claire couldn't have solved it alone. Claire escapes, only for Henry to arrive and threaten to kill them for trying to ruin the games. They overpower Henry and lock him in Claire's room before going to the home base and overriding the system to save Ben before he steams alive. Claire gives Zoe the keys to her dad's car so she could return to the building at the coordinates, which Claire says is where the game was hosted. She calls the cops as Zoe drives there, making it in time to intercept Ben as he's pulled away by an ambulance, still alive. Back at the mansion, Claire confronts Henry for what he's done to her over the years. It turns out that Henry was not responsible for the death of Sonia, as it was Claire who had made the sauna trap for her. Claire had been demonstrating sociopathic tendencies that made her mother concerned about her, and she was offended by that, entitled to love from her parents no matter what. The escape rooms throughout this film actually represented moments in the day out on the town that Sonia and Claire spent together before she died. Unfortunately, after killing Sonia, rather than proving herself to Henry like she intended, Henry instead just used her to his own benefit, taking the credit for her puzzles and reaping the rewards. Claire reveals to Henry her intention not to destroy Minos, but to take over Henry's position as games master, and finally, truly, prove herself, teasing a third film as she inputs incorrect codes, purging the oxygen in the room, and killing Henry. I was so confused. Most of the film seemed to have been explained accurately on Wikipedia. All the stuff in the train, the bank, the beach, the street, those games were exactly as described. But all this stuff about Claire and Henry, I mean, according to Wikipedia, they weren't in the fucking movie. And Wikipedia talks about some other characters showing up, even though they totally fucking didn't. And eventually I decided to check and see what IMDb had to say. And weirdly enough, it was the same synopsis with different wording. And so I just kept digging to find out what was really going on with this Mandela effect bullshit until I finally uncovered it. What Wikipedia described was the theatrical cut of the film. All the stuff that would have happened if you saw the movie in theaters. What I just watched was the extended edit that they released for the streaming release of the film. Interesting, right? Except, this is no mere extended cut. This is a different fucking movie. The theatrical cut of this film was 88 minutes long. The extended cut of this film was 95 minutes long. That's 7 minutes longer. However, what that doesn't account for is the fact that the extended cut has 25 minutes of new footage. How is that possible? They changed 18 fucking minutes of the movie. And guess what? It was the beginning and ending that they changed. That's a different fucking movie. So I decided to track down a version of the theatrical release, aka Escape Room 2-1, and compare it directly with the movie I watched, Escape Room 2-2. This time the movie doesn't have any of that stuff at Henry's and Claire's house because they just don't exist in this one. Instead, the film opens with Zoe speaking with her therapist, having spent 2 weeks attempting to get on a flight to New York, but backing out at the last minute each time. The therapist asks what would get Zoe to tackle her fear of flying, and Zoe answers that it would take seeing Minos brought to justice. She resolves to drive there with Ben to spend some time gathering evidence of the location at the coordinates to then bring to the police. From there, they drive cross-country once again, and the timelines converge, all up until the moment when Zoe falls down the trapdoor in the taxicab. She lands in the final room, a child's bedroom, revealing that the Sonia who was constantly being named between the rooms was the little girl in the scenario rather than the mother, which establishes that this story is not just an Elseworld alternate ending to the movie we saw. It is a completely different universe where things have happened entirely differently. It turns out that the puzzles have been designed this time not by the daughter of Sonia, but the mysterious mother of Sonia, revealing the puzzle maker to be none other than, bitch, you died! So remember when I said this won't be on the test? Well, pop quiz. Yes, Amanda is alive because of the ultimate rule of movie deaths.
If you didn't see it, it didn't happen.
At the bottom of the upside-down room in the first movie was an airbag that broke her fall, which is more than Gibby got. Minos proceeded to then hold her prisoner to design puzzles for them, kidnapping her daughter Sonia as collateral to make sure she keeps making the puzzles. Now she is instructed to try to convince Zoe to also design puzzles for them. At the other end of the room is a window into a room that Ben is then dropped into, who Amanda says won't be hurt if Zoe agrees to Minos' demands. Zoe adamantly declines, and Ben's room begins filling with water. Zoe acts fast, breaking the fireplace to redirect the gas toward the window and lighting it aflame. The blaze spreads and eventually melts open Ben's room, rescuing him from drowning. Zoe, Ben, and Amanda escape from the building and alert the police to Minos. This time, the police actually catch Minos in the act and raid them, properly bringing them to justice. Zoe and Ben then board a plane to return home, only for Zoe to start to feel nervous once they're off the ground. She thinks back to the secondary exit in the beach room, and the exposed line in Sonia's bedroom, and how Minos didn't evade capture this time, and starts to think that it was all a bit too easy. Then she thinks back to just before the plane took off when Alex Browning started yelling about how the plane was gonna explode. Oh wait, that's Final Destination. She starts thinking back to all the clues that seem to be reappearing in this final scene and realizes that maybe she was put through all that because she was meant to be here in this place at this time. Oh wait, that's the Final Destination. Oh wait, shit, that is what's happening in this movie. Da-da-da. Da-da-da, 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 da, da-da-da. Hey, remember the therapist from the beginning of the movie? But only this movie and not the other movie? Yeah, she was in on all this. I was hoping you'd care a little more than that. Turns out the therapist was a plant to specifically find out what would get Zoe to actually board a plane and play this one escape room that they really, really wanted her to play. So yeah, in this one, the entire game, like literally everything, happened specifically to punk Zoe into doing the game teased at the end of the first movie. If she just got onto a plane at the beginning of this movie, like she seemed to want to at the end of the first movie, then we could have skipped straight into Escape Room 3, so like, what was really accomplished here? I mean, think about it. Escape Room 1 and Escape Room 1 pretty much end the same way, with Zoe and Ben deciding to bring Minos to justice and get on a plane, but uh-oh, the plane is rigged by Minos to be an escape room that'll crash into a fucking mountain. I guess it's not like nothing happened in this movie. Someone who died in the first movie was resurrected by the necromantic act of retcon. Also, 4 more people died, but you know, they made a point in this movie about how if you don't literally watch the life leave a person's eyes in this world, then they're still kicking. And we see one of 2 people who supposedly died in the quicksand trap just not be dead a little while later. So, I can't wait to see Nathan in Escape Room 3. Oh yeah, Escape Room 3. See, that's the main reason I was so perplexed by the fact that Escape Room Tournament of Champions and Escape Room Tournament of Champions are two different movies. Escape Room 2-1 ends with Zoe and Ben seeming to destroy Minos, but surprise, they now find themselves at the beginning of yet another game in a plane that's gonna crash, set up by the same games master who set up the simulation of this game in Escape Room 1 and died in Escape Room 2-2. Escape Room 2-2 ends with Zoe and Ben leaving to recover from the games while Minos is severely wounded by a character who literally doesn't exist in Escape Room 2-1 and now insists on becoming the main antagonist going forward by becoming the new games master for Minos. Oh, also Amanda is still dead. Probably. Maybe. I don't fucking know. My point is, both of these movies tease sequels that completely disregard the sequel that the other movie teases. And I'm just sitting here thinking like, what are we gonna do? Both of these two different movies want a sequel that actively contradicts the other. What are we gonna do? Anyway, I'm writing a spec script for Escape Room 3. It's about a screenwriter being kidnapped by Sony Pictures and forced to write Escape Room 3, solving their deadly puzzle of how the fuck it's supposed to make sense between Escape Room 2-1 and Escape Room 2-2. I'd settle for a fucking MatPat video at this point. Which one was my favorite, you ask? Easy. Escape Room 2. No, the other one. So Squid Game was good. Yeah, great stuff. Sure am glad that didn't also end with the main character resolving to confront the organization behind the games. Something airplane. Fuck! Boy, ain't that some good content that I bet you want to subscribe for. In fact, I'd almost wager you want to support me on Patreon. That content was so good. I know you think so. That high-end escape room commentary, mwah, more like that coming, so ring that bell. Love yourself, and good night.